saw the title, you already know what it is. Today we're doing a very simple watermelon session wine. I might throw in a little mint. I'm going to use a little lime for acidity. Starting by just sanitizing everything, as always. I'm going to keep it simple. Just going to start chopping up this watermelon. Essentially what a session wine is it's just a wine, but it has a lower ABV content. And my idea is that I'm just not going to add any extra sugar to this. I'm just going to see how much sugar nature gave me with this watermelon, and then just ferment it from there and see what we get. I'm just going to scoop out some of this watermelon, and I'm throwing it into my KitchenAid. And I saw this technique online of sort of mashing up a watermelon, just putting it in your KitchenAid and putting the mixer attachment on it and letting it go and letting it just mash up your watermelon. I put this little guard on because it kind of got a little messy. And in hindsight, I think you could just do this in a blender. I don't think there'd be any problems. My thinking was that I didn't want to break up any seeds, although this was a seedless watermelon, so that didn't really make any sense. But nevertheless, I did it this way. And I'm just pouring our loosely mashed up watermelon pieces into a brew bag to try to get rid of all of this water. Or should I say, get rid of all of these solids, actually. And I'm just going to squeeze out all this watermelon water. And you can see why they call them watermelons. There's a lot of liquid in these things. I'm hoping to fill up my entire half-gallon fermenter with this. And we'll see how much sugar is in it. Watermelons can sometimes vary quite a lot in sugar level. So I'm curious to see what kind of sugar concentration we're going to get out of this. Time to whip out the half-gallon fermenter that has been sanitized off-screen. Every single thing touching the brew has been sanitized off-screen. I just don't always show it because it's a little bit boring. I'm going to just pour off this gorgeous red liquid, pink liquid, into our fermenter. And it's looking pretty good. I'm hoping it maintains some of this red color, but we will see. I'm going to try to just squeeze out a little bit more of this water. Getting in a good couple of gushes there, just trying to extract as much liquid as I can out of this. You'd think I'd buy a juicer by now, but alas, I'm just using my hands. My goal with this wine is to get something that I think is kind of maybe light and refreshing, and you could maybe just drink it on a hot summer day. That's also why I don't really want to go too high ABV with this, but we'll see how this turns out. I don't really have that many expectations for this wine. All right, now I'm going to whip out the NutriBullet because I'm thinking the best way to incorporate this mint is to blend it up. I'm just going to squeeze in a little bit of lime juice and then rip off a couple of loose mint leaves and try to just blend this up. I don't want the mint to be overpowering, but I think it complements the watermelon, so a hint of it might be nice, just to add a bit more freshness. I'm also going to just pour in a last little bit of this watermelon juice we have as a medium to blend this all up. After extracting the mint flavor, I'm just pouring it through a sieve to cut out any of the bigger chunks, and I'm hoping I'm just left with a little bit of a minty flavor. And then I'm just going to shake this up and make sure everything is fully and completely incorporated. And as satisfying as these slow-mo shots are to look at, they are also serving us a vital purpose. We need to aerate our must at this stage. It will introduce oxygen and nitrogen into our must, which the yeast are going to need in order to successfully proliferate and colonize and feel comfortable calling this jar their home for the next few weeks. I'm now going to take out just a little sample with a sanitized pipette and do a little pH reading to see if we're going to need any more lime juice. Having a feeling we are. And after a quick test, the color still looks relatively green. We're reading a 4.5, which isn't too bad, but I'm going to try to get that just a little bit lower. I'm going to squeeze in another lime into this thing and see if we can get just below that 4.5, I think is ideal. If it's higher than 4.5, sometimes you can get things like botulism growing, which is poisonous to us as human beings, so we're going to try to avoid that. It's caused by a bacteria that produces a neurotoxin. So needless to say, we're not going to want that in the brew. And now we're reading 4, which is perfect. 4 is good enough for us. I'm going to whip out the refractometer and use the last little bit of the juice we have in this pipette to check our sugar concentrations. Feel free to use a hydrometer for this step if you prefer it. And a quick test shows we are reading 11 Brix, which is low. As I said, this was going to be a session wine. This is essentially not going after a high alcohol concentration, but instead giving something light, refreshing, something you can drink a lot of and not get not get too happy. For our yeast, we will be using a Lalvin 71B because it is advertised to be good for fruity and young wine styles, which I think this will be both of those things. So I'm just going to throw it directly into the top of our fermenter here. And now that our yeast is added, I'm going to throw on a lid with a little hole and gasket in it. Now that yeast is in here, we don't want this bottle exploding, so we're going to have to add an airlock. For that airlock, I'm using a water lock, but despite the name, I'm going to be filling it with a little bit of sanitizer solution. If you fill it with just water, sometimes flies can get and actually swim through the water and get into your brew, so the sanitizer solution just helps keep things from growing in the airlock and keeps flies from getting in. And boom, our watermelon session wine is ready. That is all it took. We're going to let this ferment, converting all of this sugar into alcohol. And I'm expecting this to go pretty fast. There's not all that much sugar in here. After a few hours, maybe a day, I woke up the next morning and I saw that our watermelon wine blew up into our airlock, which can happen. To remedy this, you can put on a blow-off tube, basically a long piece of tube that just comes out, and in lieu of a water lock, have it go into a cup of water that also has sanitizer solution and basically does the same thing, but it allows anything that blows up to blow off. Instead, I'm actually going to just swap it out with this waterless airlock because sometimes it's a little less messy, and especially since I think this fermentation won't be very long, I don't think we're going to have any problems here. And after a little bit more time, our watermelon session wine has lost all of its color. It looks like it's seen a ghost. The red has completely settled to the bottom and left us with this really disappointing pale yellow liquid with this red lees sitting on the bottom of our fermenter. And it's kind of upsetting. It doesn't strike you as watermelon when you look at it. Now it feels like a weird pale white wine. So a little disappointed about that. It didn't maintain its color. But I'm hoping maybe it's retained some of its watermelon flavor at the very least. Now, I'm trying to be as gentle as I can, but you can see those first couple pumps. No, I stirred up a bunch of the lees, which sucks. It's not ideal. And so our beautiful clear liquid is now regaining some of that color, unfortunately, which in some ways is nice because, I did like the color. I liked the pink color. The watermelon wine that's white, that doesn't have any pink hues, felt a little off, but it does mean that a bunch of this lees was stirred up and it is going to just settle out again. So ultimately, I botched this rack job. And it's a result of just this autosiphon not being that good. I've upgraded since shooting this, but it is a shame. And so what we're getting out of this autosiphon is a mix, a pale pink, sort of salmon color. And this will remove most of the lees anyway, which is okay. I'm going to just let this sit, and hopefully some of this red will settle out once again. But in the meantime, it shouldn't have changed anything that much as far as our readings. So I'm going to check our refractometer. We are reading 3.5, so we have gone dry. And because I'm going to make this a session wine, I am back sweetening it with monk fruit extract. The idea with back sweetening with monk fruit extract is that it is not a fermentable sugar. It is not a fermentable sweetener. So the yeast can't eat this and it cannot convert this into alcohol. If I were to add sugar into this to try to back sweeten, the fermentation is just going to kick off again and we're going to get a higher ABV and the yeast is going to eat all this. And what you can do is pasteurize or stabilize in some way, killing the yeast and then add sugar in. But like I said, I'm thinking of making this a sparkling session wine. And to do that, you can artificially carbonate with a carbonating apparatus of some kind that they sell that I do not own. But I am going after a natural carbonation. And to do that, I actually need the yeast to still do their job. But I can't have them do their job too much. You see the dilemma here? So I'm back sweetening with monk fruit extract, and then I'm adding just the right amount of sugar for the yeast to convert it into CO2 and a little bit more alcohol, and then capping my bottles to trap that CO2 inside and create a pressurized vessel that forces the CO2 into the solution, thereby creating a naturally carbonated beverage. That is the goal anyway. The risk is that these bottles might explode if I add too much sugar. So I'm not really sure exactly how much sugar I should be adding. I was looking online. The consensus seemed to say half a teaspoon should be good. So I'm adding half a teaspoon to these bottles. That being said, it's a very delicate balance between too much carbonation and not enough. And I figure, let's play it safe. I'll do half a teaspoon. And if that's not enough, we'll just try again. Hoping to get a little bit of carbonation and not have these bottles explode. I'm also going to add in a little bit of insurance yeast. And it's just a pinch of, this is just bread yeast because we're not actually fermenting all that much sugar. It's a little bit, so it's not going to really affect flavor in any meaningful way. So this bread yeast is a little bit cheaper. I'm just going to throw it in these bottles as a little insurance just to make sure when we racked it that any yeast that was present, we didn't lose when we did our racking. And it just makes sure there's yeast that is relevant and alive and here for our new carbonation fermentation. So it's a little bit of bread yeast. I'm hoping that's going to be just enough to give us a little insurance to make sure that this will kick off and this will in fact carbonate. After that, I'm racking it into these 3 little bottles here with a little bit of sugar and a little bit of insurance yeast added. And hopefully we're going to see another fermentation that will create some natural carbonation inside these bottles. So capping these off, and I'm going to let these sit for around 3 to 5 days, maybe even a week. You can't really let them wait too long per se, because the idea is that the yeast will eat all the sugar. And once the sugar's gone, it's gone. And the CO2 was there and the carbonation should stay. After, I'm going to put them in this box just in case they do explode. It won't create too much of a mess for me. The last thing we need here is broken glass and my session wine all over my home. After a few weeks, the pink once again has all settled out and we're left with this weird pale yellow beverage. But I'm going to pop this open and we failed. It is a little bit carbonated. There was a tiny pop when I opened this bottle, but it wasn't anywhere enough for my taste. So I'm going to double the recipe. I'm going to have to add definitely more sugar to this. We played it safe and it shows. It is completely flat and it also doesn't taste too good on top of it. So a complete fail on all accounts. I'm going to add to one bottle, I'm going to do 1 full teaspoon. And to another bottle, I'm going to do 2 full teaspoons just to push it to the max to see if we can even make one of these bottles explode if we wanted to. And if the bottle explodes, so be it. I hate to wait another week and we're not left with enough carbonation. So with this bottle, I'm going to add 2 full teaspoons. And hopefully that will be enough. If this is not enough, I'll be shocked. So I'm pushing my luck. I'm a little bit expecting that this might explode. So I'm just going to give it a little shake to make sure everything's incorporated. But luckily, after a few days, nothing actually ended up exploding. So I refrigerated it, and we actually got a nice amount of clarity here. And so it is now time for the moment of truth. There we go. A perfect popping sound. There was pressure. It's a beautiful sight. The other one was even better. I caught it in slow-mo. There was a little bit of like this smoke that came off the top, this CO2 smoke, which is just a beautiful amount of carbonation. Pouring it into a glass, I'm getting exactly what I want. A great amount of carbonation. There isn't that much structure to this, so it doesn't really hold a head per se as like a beer, might. But it's holding a head like a soda might, or like, some sort of carbonated something might. So that's all I'm after here. The bubbles are good. You taste it. It lights up your mouth. We successfully carbonated this beverage. So I think next time I do this, 2 teaspoons is the move. Do this test at home. Your results may vary, and it depends on how much carbonation you want. So be careful about exploding bottles. But for me, I believe these are 16-ounce bottles filled as much as you saw them here. 2 teaspoons was enough. Flavor-wise, I do have to say, this tasted terrible. The monk fruit was a really weird flavor. It was a sweetness, but you could tell it was not sugar. I back sweetened it with a little bit more honey here just to give it a little something, and that helped it taste a lot better. It had a sour note to it, like it almost tasted, after I added the honey especially, it almost tasted like Sour Patch Kids, like watermelon Sour Patch Kids, or like a sour beer, but without any of the hops or grains. Overall, it just kind of lacked some body. But there you go, a light, refreshing drink for the summer. I'll definitely finish these bottles, but for the amount of time and work put in, the flavor just wasn't really there for me. Not all these are successes. It's a lot of experiments going on. So let me know what I should have done different here, or what I should make next. Anyway, thanks for watching.